sunny night, nor'easter rolling in. It's a long 12 hours, the power's out again. I pray for inner strength and that we don't lose no lives. Just another day in the first responders' eyes. Half a cup of coffee's gone, the first run comes in. A car slid off the road, there's a family trapped within. My heart beats like a hammer, I can barely catch my breath. I'm thinking the worst and hoping for the best. Yeah, we ain't superheroes, we're just ordinary people trying to make a difference, and the first on every scene. It's a heavy, heavy burden to carry all this burden when you can't unsee the things you've seen. It keeps going on. When those sirens are gone.
Welcome to the award-winning Mad Radio Show and your first responder network to Healing Our Heroes with John and Sam. We are dedicated to providing the first responders with the most up-to-date mental health resources available to you. We are coming to you live from the Globe Life Park, the home of the Fishbowl Radio Network, in the heart of the entertainment district here in Arlington. Man, we've had a great show on a 99, and we're going to follow it up with a great show here. We have some amazing people in our studio, you know, and Sam, I know me and you always blah, 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 for the first couple of minutes of the show, but I think this is such an important aspect for our upcoming weekend. We just got to dive right into it. So tell us about it. What do we got coming up?
we got a whole crew in here.
I know. We already got yelled at.
I know. We got in trouble. So, my gosh, we've got Blue Help in the house. We've got Trauma Behind the Badge in the house. We got Survive First. Help me out. We've got
Warriors
Keep. Warriors Rest Foundation. Sorry.
Warriors Rest Foundation. I mean, let's just start off with September 26th. We are renaming the Highway 66 bridge that connects Rowlett and Rockwall, the two counties together. We've been walking it in to raise awareness for suicide. And at 9 o'clock, we're going to do the unveiling, and we're going to rename it to Heroes Bridge. But we took, somebody jumped on board with that and said, "Hey, listen, I got a bigger vision. I got a much bigger vision for what you guys are doing. I want to memorialize this, and I want to put a park to remember our first responders forever and their families." And that's where Blue Help jumped in. And Karen, you have been so inspirational, so helpful. So you and Chris have been working so hard on this park and getting this done. And we got the week. Saturday is the day we're going to be doing all this. And now you're here, so
I'm here.
Speak up. Tell Blue Help. Yeah. Blue Help is a wonderful organization that really does a lot for families. Tell us how it all started.
Sure. So, it's a funny thing because it's not like we didn't start it intentionally. So, after the incident in Ferguson, I got a little mad, all the negative police rhetoric, which is nothing compared to what it is now, right?
Right. Yeah.
So,
close.
Oh, sorry. So,
you just got
and I typically talk louder too, so I don't know why I'm talking quiet today.
You're always screaming at everybody else.
She's got kids too.
I know.
So yeah.
So I wrote a book called Hearts Beneath the Badge because I just wanted to talk about what the good things first responders, specifically law enforcement, do. And when writing that book, I found that a lot of police officers were suffering through trauma and they didn't know where to get help. So I started researching it for them and sending them, places to go. And then somebody said, well, why don't you write a book about all the bad stuff we go through? So then that evolved into this book called The Price They Pay, which I wrote with one of our co-founders, Jeff Miguel. And we wrote that book, and it just kind of evolved. Our intent was to raise awareness about law enforcement suicide because we realized nobody was really paying attention to it year over year. And it just evolved. We didn't start down this path intentionally. And once we did, it just kind of spiraled out of control. You know, one day Jeff said, hey, we should have a page like Officer Down Memorial page with suicides. I said, okay. So over the weekend, I built a website. I go, here we go. What's next? And we just kept, okay, now let's help the families. And we help the families. Then let's count the suicides. So we count the suicides. And then Jeff.
Were you shocked when when you say you count suicides? Were you shocked to see the numbers coming in?
Yeah. So, and it's hard because there's so many and you don't realize it. And a lot of them, they fly under the radar. You don't hear about them. So the first year we were taking the numbers was 2016. We started January 1st and we ended the year with like 128. And then afterwards, when people started hearing about us, our number is now at like 140 for that year. So it's a rolling number. If you tell us and we add it if we don't have it. And the thing was, it was taking us 3 to 6 months to find them or hear about them. And now we get them as they happen. You know, a first responder, like their partner or a wife the next day, or an officer on the scene will send us a text message. So it's gotten more intense because people are more intentional about reporting them. We still don't think we have them all. And this year, the number is relatively low compared to last year, which is a really good thing. But we don't know what effect COVID had on reporting or on the suicides. So we spoke to a few epidemiologists that work in this field, and they said you have to have 8 to 10 years of data to really have a true picture. So we're finishing our 5th year right now. So in a couple more years, we'll really know, was 2019 just a blip on the screen? And I don't mean that in a negative, I'm not downplaying the number of suicides, but consistently it's around 175, 180, somewhere in that range that are reported to us. But last year I think we're actually up to 232 now. We just haven't updated the website yet because, again, it's a rolling number.
Right. And,
it's that mission that, COVID, it's that double-edged sword that John and I talked about, and I've had the distinct pleasure to be listening in on the police resiliency symposium that's going on.
Amazing. Me too.
Yeah, so the NYPD is putting it on with Columbia University, and so talking about how we talk about the quiet times. So when you have that time to reflect, and if you're not resilient, how you can spiral out of control. With COVID, I'll call it the blessing in disguise for a lot of our first responders is they've got a mission every single day. And a lot of those days it's changing. So they're not stagnant either. And that, John, we've been there.
What's going to happen when we go back to the norm?
What's going to happen when we fall back? You and I have talked about this before. We don't see the country returning to any sense of norm, God, for at least a year. From now,
right?
Because we got,
if we're lucky,
because we got, we see what happens in November, but we also thrive, and when I say we as first responders, we thrive on, being with each other, community contact, and it looks a little different, but we have that. So is COVID playing a part in keeping us healthy to a point? Because it doesn't take away the stress. It just allows us to compartmentalize a little bit better. And if we're resilient, we can push forward. And let's face it, guys are talking to each other more too.
Right, but the thing I'm going to touch on that, and I'm going to bring 9/11 back into it. You had 1,000 people on a pile digging for family and friends, right? Nobody at any point said, oh man, I can't take this, or cried or broke down or anything. They had that mission. Mm-hmm. They were focused. For 18 months, they constantly went. And that's COVID. And I'm not comparing the two, but I'm saying they're on a mission and drive. They went from 8-hour tours to 12-hour tours. They've had days off canceled with all the riots that are going on. So they're in constant work mode. They're in constant, I got to perform my job.
Yeah.
Right? So now what happens when all of this goes away and I'm back to my mundane 8-hour tour, or I retire because I can't take it no more, and I'm sitting in the front watching the TV going, my whole body's shutting down.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Well, the other thing too is, so we actually saw a decline in March, April, and May, and that was when the quarantine was at its highest when it first started, and there was that renewed sense of camaraderie, and there was that and police officers were heroes now, right? 'Cause
Yes.
they're not usually heroes, but during those couple months, they were
Yep.
heroes like all the rest of the
Yep.
first responders. And now we are back so those 3 months we had less than 10 suicides a month, and we usually get about 18 to 20 a month. So we're back up to that number now. So,
Well, and-
so it
and-
was just that 3 month period that it was really low.
Those are
Well-
the ones being reported.
The ones being
Right.
reported,
So
correct.
so what flipped it on its head was you have this mission and then everything's good and then you have a complete backlash against our first responders.
Doug, do you want to weigh in on that?
You know, I was just going to say with trauma behind the badge, you know, we've talked about this and kind of unloaded about it, that you know, now we're walking around with targets on our back. It doesn't matter what city you're in. It doesn't seem like you can do anything right. And the worst part about it is these ideas of these cities to defund. Because what's the number one thing that we already know that's going to change the tide of law enforcement community relations? Training. What's the first thing that already got cut? Training. And if these cities have decided to defund, when all this shitstorm starts to calm down, that's when you don't have a department because you've been completely defunded.
Right, and that's what's going to have the effect on the kids. Good.
I think
kids.
from a peer support standpoint, you know, we're out there seeing these people. There's two things that really come to mind when I'm hearing Sam talk about this. Is number one, I'm going to follow up with something you said, which is they're in mission mode. We call it mission mode. So you really can't respond to an officer in a peer support role when they're in mission mode, because they're just not going to connect with you. They have this mission. It's ingrained in their DNA. They've been brainwashed to finish the mission at all costs. So they're not going to come offline long enough for you to actually have a conversation with them about their mental health. Now, the second thing to that is this. I do think I believe the numbers. We're actually on target, doing the work. We're doing a great job. I mean, these people are courageous, noble human beings to stand the line and do what they're doing. But yet what's happening, we see at Warriors Rest Foundation, what we're seeing is a fail at home. The spouse, and we talked about this last hour, right? So to follow up on that is the officers actually are doing great. They're actually connecting and they're communicating. What's not happening is they're not connecting at home, and we see the spouse piece. We see these intimate relationships falling apart, or the fear factor of what's going on in our nation. That is really what's taking its toll. That's a major component.
But we're seeing something we've never seen before too with families. Okay, that TV set. When I was on a job, okay, I'd come home. I would tell my wife, "Yeah, the day was all right. I made a collar. I'm done."
Yeah.
Right now, families, spouses, kids are seeing police on the TV being assaulted, spit on, kicked, defunded, cursed at. Hey, doesn't Daddy do that job? Doesn't Daddy put that? So now we brought law enforcement and
Into our
living rooms. Correct.
Right.
Where our families now could see it. So do you think it's it's got to be affecting spouses and children even more than ever.
One of the guys that contracts with us, I asked permission to actually use this story. His 16-year-old son is now in fear of physical assault at his school because his dad is a law enforcement officer, and that's the epitome of the far end of bullying, right? But it is this narrative piece that this ugly stain that is verbally and social media projected on our law enforcement. Yes, they're going to work. They're doing a great job, courageous work. What's really concerning is what's happening at home with the spouses, their children, this really ugly narrative that's eking its way into the home.
Yeah, Savannah Solis, you'll meet her this weekend. She's coming out. She's wrote a book. She's been thanking police officers since she was 10 years old. I was speaking to her mom yesterday, and when you say about school, the 16-year-old being bullied in school or being ridiculed in school for his
fearful,
dad.
yeah.
Savannah is being bullied because she's preaching the thank you speech, and she didn't know, a 16-year-old mind cannot process all of this.
How about the
They're just
football
trying
player?
to do the right thing.
This entire the school district in Ohio that indefinitely suspended the football player for carrying out a thin blue line flag,
Right.
and his friend who carried the thin red line.
Right.
Both of their parents are first responders.
So, right.
And you're yanked off your football team? I mean, come on.
This is affecting our children. This is affecting the children of first responders. How is that going to play out in the 8 to 10 year period? Right.
Well,
when we talk about getting the numbers together, how is that going to play out on a therapy chair with the child? Because they don't know how to
we
process
certainly
any of this.
are raising an angry bunch.
Yeah.
With school is supposed to be the second safe place, right, besides your home. Right, for most kids, most students. And now they're not safe at school because you've got agendas that don't belong in the school system that are, because people can't see through their own shit.
But, last year, I'm sure the 16-year-old was proud that his dad was a law enforcement officer. He probably boasted about it in school. But you know what?
He talked about it more.
But he probably talked about it more and was able to show that pride, and now kids are being silenced. They can't even be proud of their parents. And I see my friends now. I mean, look at the shirts we're wearing in this studio, right? Okay. I got friends that have law enforcement shirts that are scared to wear law enforcement paraphernalia to go shopping. They're scared to put "I back the blue" stickers on their car for the fear that somebody's going to damage it. Where are we going?
Yeah, and I gotta tell you a funny story, two funny stories actually. So I was going to the store the other day, Saturday, and I was actually going with my husband, and I went to get a.
Right?
I that was the day I paid because
That's
he was with me.
the thievingest woman I've ever
I
met in my
know.
life. Like,
Have you seen? She just goes into stores and
every week
steals.
she's walking down the store without
I have a
paying.
lot on my mind.
I have no idea what they're talking
getting
about
to pay
here.
for my stuff at the store. I have a lot on my
Just
mind.
statute of limitations on
But
that.
anyway, I went back in and paid. So I was reaching into my drawer to get a long sleeve shirt on, and the first one was one of my Blue Help shirts, and it has a photo on the back that says, "When you think you're alone, you're not." And it has a bunch of police officers on it. And I reached in, I picked it up, I put it down. I said, "You know what? Fuck you." And I put, excuse me.
Yep.
And I put the shirt on and I
Beep.
wore it because my first reaction was, what is somebody going to say when I wear it? And then the other thing was my son, who's a really funny kid because he takes everything literally and he's not afraid to say anything. And they, in his class, had to write an essay, and they had to watch, it was his English class, they watched the video of Tamir Rice being shot. Now, this was in school, middle school, and they watched a few other videos, and they were supposed to write an essay. So I get a call from the principal, and I have to come to the principal, and I'm thinking, oh my God, what do we do? So
I didn't steal anything, I swear.
She explains to me that they had to watch these videos, and they were supposed to write an essay about what they think about police brutality. And she slides a piece of paper over to me, and she goes, "And this is your son's essay." And I read it, and all he wrote was, "This is English class, not racism class." And he passed it in, and I started laughing.
Good for him.
Yeah.
I started, and
Yeah,
the
good
principal's
for
like, "Do you think that's funny?" I'm like, "Well, it kind of is," because
It's
it
the
really,
truth.
it's
It's
the
the
middle
truth.
school.
Yeah, this
He's
does
in middle
not
school.
belong in school
No.
at all. These
No.
are family conversations.
Yes.
And in this country, we have crossed the line. Hey, if your child is in public school, you have the absolute option and right to yank them right out and homeschool them, number one, which I know a lot of parents, especially in Texas,
Pulling kids out.
pulling kids out left and right. It is educators, if you're listening, I love you, but this is not your job. You have allowed your bosses to push you into something where the line has been crossed. And I have had this conversation very briefly with Steve, and it was like, no, it's not happening. Wiley school system. That's right, Wiley, I'm calling you out. First week of school.
Oh, with the
I showed you that with the cartoon.
Yep.
And it was in whether it was English or whatever the class was, and they had to write how current police brutality goes all the way back
KKK.
to KKK and even further back to slavery. How it is similar. Okay, now Wiley ISD, we're in Texas.
See, but
Major backlash. Immediately pulled. The principal gave an apology. It seemed like, these were rogue teachers.
right, and that's what I'm saying. Is it a teachers or is it the part
I
of
don't care.
the curriculum?
Because it's leadership.
No,
And it
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree
it goes all the
100%.
way to the top. So as far as I'm concerned, those teachers should have lost their jobs. The principal should have been severely reprimanded.
Right, but like Karen, with your son, is it the teachers pushing this curriculum going outside the Board of Education, or is it the curriculum that's coming down from the Board of
I
Education?
don't know, but it's the
Or is it just-
responsibility of
or
the
is it
parents
the
to
rogue
ask.
teacher saying, "I want your response," because the teachers teach a STAR program. They don't want to teach that either, but that comes from the Board of Education.
Well, because the
Right.
kids have to pass the test.
Correct.
Okay,
But
this has nothing
or
to
is
do
this
with
just some
passing
English
a
teacher
test.
trying to indoctrinate your kids, just like some of the college professors trying to.
So Karen, what is the answer to that question?
I don't know. In this particular instance, we believe it was the teacher. However, the school, their reaction, the principal's reaction, and the principal actually said, and I couldn't believe this, and the principal she's African American. She said, Mrs. Solomon, this teacher isn't racist. And I said, how do you know? And she said, well, she's Irish and the Irish aren't racist. And I was like, what? I called my husband. I go, I don't even know where I was today. I don't know what was
Okay,
going
we
on.
just went on to another planet.
It was just
like
completely bizarre.
Yeah.
So the whole school.
I think she took that whole "Kiss Me, I'm Irish" T-shirt thing to another
I
level.
mean, the whole situation with that particular school was really bizarre. And there was a lot of things that were going on. And we were glad that, obviously he's not there anymore. But my older son, who's going to college, his college, they banned law enforcement on their campus, UMass Boston. It was very public. They used to stage there for.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah,
for the marathon and everything. And they said, no, we don't want police officers on our campus anymore. And by the way, if you're a cop and you come to our school as a student, you can't come with anything identifying you as a cop. But you're welcome to be a student. So I'm looking at my husband going, how do we send him there? And my husband's like, we don't. I'm like, okay, we don't. It's just, you can't, how can you?
Yeah, you have to draw a line.
You know what I mean? So it is like you say, Savannah's being bullied. So my son's father's, if he's a regular human being, if he's in his day clothes, but the minute he puts on his uniform, he's a monster and he's not allowed onto the campus because he's threatening to people. That doesn't make that the logic is completely
There is no
crazy.
And the
there's no
same,
logic.
that's making that decision is going to go home, and when he hears his car alarm go off in the middle of the night, first person he's going to call is cops.
Well, you saw that with Alyssa Milano, right?
Well, look
Just
at
down-
Chicago, the mayor of Chicago. She's having her house
A bunch of
protected.
bunch of mayors, and we saw it in
nuts.
Seattle. So the Seattle mayor has done a complete 180, is saying she does not want to defund the police, and she's got a city council that somehow the city council, I guess they write it in the way, but it is Seattle. They can veto what the mayor wants to enact.
yeah.
I mean, you know what?
People just make stuff up.
No, I say let them eat their own, because right now they're getting a taste of their own medicine. It's exactly what you just said, Doug. When the shit hits the fan in the middle of the night, 911 is the first number they call. And hey, I hope you like being put on hold or say, sorry, you're going to have to wait till the morning till social workers can respond to your house.
What I'm also looking at is with the kids being bullied in school, the kids of police officers being bullied in school, as a dad or a mom who proudly wears that uniform every day, right? We have traumas. We discussed this, right? Now you come home and your kid is beaten up or is crying because of what you do. I don't know how I react. You talk about survivor's guilt on top of now, because of my profession, I'm hurting my children. I'm hurting my family. That's got to be a mental strain all above itself, on itself. You get it. I mean, I was waiting for you to.
Absolutely. So now you're talking about some moral injury stuff. I think there's a moral injury prevalence within our culture right now that is we're restricted on acting, or we're restricted on responding, or we feel like we can't respond, or maybe we shouldn't. But at the same time, the moral injury comes in. I should respond. I'm here to protect and serve, but I cannot. So now you throw into this game the family piece, which is, am I damaging? I
can't protect my kids.
I already knew I was maybe inflicting some secondary trauma, or if you're educated, you knew that you were vicariously traumatizing your child, but now they're actually being inflicted harm on them because of what I do, because of
Right.
the very thing that I stand for. They're getting at a minimum, they're getting bullied.
I'm a little lucky where I'm at. It's I got to say we're pretty lucky in Florida. We don't have it as much as most people do throughout the nation. I don't really recall any happening
Incidents?
around us, but which we.
That's because you guys got the early bird special. Everybody goes to
Yeah.
It's Florida. Everybody goes
4
to
o'clock
eat and they're
dinner.
asleep by 7 o'clock.
and everybody's too busy looking at the palm trees, and old people are blocking the roads, and the kids.
Look at that plug in my scooter.
Yeah, and I'm guilty of it too. But one of the things that I for the first time, because like Karen, I don't give a crap, man. I wear my stuff down on the beach, when it's crowded on the weekend. I'm proud of what I did.
And you
right?
should be. And you should be.
But we have a couple sheriffs in Florida that like to be on TV all the time. And one of them went on there and said, I want everybody to put blue lights on their house to let everybody, represent law enforcement. Great. That's pretty cool. But I was like, so I always had blue in I have a light up mailbox, and I just like the color it's subdued. I took it out. And I'm like, well, I have a duty now to protect my family, not your family anymore. I'm retired, and I don't want these knuckleheads driving by my house, because I live in a small town, so everybody knows. Even as a drug agent, everybody knew I was a drug agent because it's a small town. And I just was like, no, I'm not putting a light bulb out there. I'm taking the stickers off. We don't have them, but in Florida, we have the little badges. If you're a cop, you got a little metal badge. And even my Karen was like, man, I'm a little worried about that. But luckily enough, we haven't had that. But to add to your story, we were talking about bringing home. I tortured my kids for years because they never knew what dad was coming home. Was it mad dad? Was it angry dad? And so we talk about that. But now we have a bigger problem on top of all that. Like Brad and Sam were saying, we need to come in and have those conversations in the house. The problem is we don't have those proper conversations. That's why it's important that we have the spousal stuff, and there's organizations like Karen's group that works with the families. There's like Brad's group that works with the family, like we're starting to do, because we don't have those conversations. And our conversations with our kids are secondary, because the primary conversation is the social media. And, we did this study years ago that I worked with the NAACP on, and about violent crime. And one of the things we learned was parents nowadays, like when I was a kid, I had a stay-home mom. It was common that your mom stayed. I was from the Fonzie days, you know what I mean? You stayed home, your mom cooked, your dad worked.
Yep.
And you know what Fonzie is. He got real quiet. I'm
Who
like,
is
don't act like
Fonzie?
that kid over there doesn't know who Fonzie is, but we all know who Fonzie is.
That's my kid. He knows.
he knows.
He saw it on social media.
I'm older than I look.
But we nowadays, like, look at Karen. I say all the time on my show, she's the hardest working woman I know in the industry. Mom and dad work so much, and I was guilty of this. When we get home, kids want to talk to us. We're like, hey, I'm too tired. Just go play in your room. And if they're in the room, they're on computers, they're on YouTube, they're on all this stuff. So our conversation with our kids are secondary.
And
so they're already, you know what I mean? They're already been preempt to it. And then the funny part, which is kind of a contradiction, is the cop shows, right? And everything about the cops. But if you turn your TV on, every TV show's got a law enforcement component to it. The most popular shows were,
Right.
what y'all were talking about
Barney
on the show
Miller.
before that.
Oh.
I'm a
I know Barney Miller. Yeah.
Barney Miller and
Go to
Fish.
Yep.
You forgot about Fish. So
Fish. That's right.
So we've got a double whammy to deal with on the family side. So like you started this conversation. So the cop comes.
How do you approach that conversation with a child who's has a problem processing, his hormonal issues? We can't even talk to our kids about sex anymore. It's hard enough for a parent to
Speak for yourself. I talk to them about
I
everything.
know. Yeah, we
It's
have
like,
a
Mom,
pretty
stop,
open.
stop.
Yeah.
Well, some.
That's what
Yeah,
I
okay.
get. That's what it's. Please, I got it.
I just
Stop,
told
Mom.
go
Yeah.
on Pornhub and you'll find it all out. But
Oh, Mad
Yeah,
Radio
you-
is a
you-
responsible
YouTube it.
show. Just saying.
But parents find it hard to speak to the kid about sex, mental issues, or anything else. How do you come home as a cop, a proud that you've been, you've taken the kid to the police department, you've put him in the car, you've put him on the mounted horse. They've been all, now to turn around to him and say, why doesn't anybody respect you, Dad? How do you do that? How do you show a kid that the country has turned on him after all that kid knows was, I want to be a police officer or I want to be a firefighter? It's a tough thing for any child to process.
And every kid is different too. So
and every kid's different, right?
My kids, my son, pick up his friend Jordan. Jordan's black, and I every once in a while I check in with him. I say, "Is everything okay with Jordan? He doesn't mind being here because Pop's a cop." He's like, "Mom, why do you bring that up?" And they get mad at me, but you can't help it. You know what I mean? Because of everything. So you're having that talk about race. You're having that talk about their profession, and my kids. I mean, they're a little old, not a lot older. They're 16 and 18, but 15 and 18. They've kind of adapted, and they do ask questions because they see it on the news, and they ask why I get upset now, why he gets upset now, because some kids it doesn't bother them as much yet,
right.
But then there's other kids who it's really troubling to them, and the parents, it's a really hard conversation, and when I ask them questions that I don't want to have to ask them, I take a big deep breath and I go, you gotta do it, just power through it, you gotta ask them, because if you don't, whatever they hear from somebody else or whatever feelings they can't process is going to be much worse than your discomfort of talking to them about the profession, about what's going on, about the riots, about COVID, whatever it is. But especially for us, where you have the COVID, the race, and the profession, and why is Pop mad? Why doesn't he want to go to work anymore? That kind of thing. You have to talk to them. There's no question. You just got to do it.
Communication, once again, is the key. And your principal, so when you go back and talk to her the next time, so as you know, I was a professional soccer player once upon a time, and the most racist stuff I ever saw in my career was the Irish and the English. I'm telling you, 30-some years of playing, so I had guys from Manchester, England on my team, and our goalie was from Ireland. So that internal argument, and whenever we would play teams, I don't know I don't know the history, and I don't care to know, but out of all my years, and I played every country you could think of, they were the most racist people I'd ever met against each other. So give her a soccer lesson when you go back.
I think to take a little bit of a swing at your question, in from my point of view, is you at least need to have the conversation. You need to start the conversation even if you don't feel equipped. If you're ill-equipped, you need to still at least have the conversation. Saying nothing is virtually the worst thing you could do. Right. But I would encourage anybody that's a parent in this industry listening to this show, you're better at this than what you think you are. One of the things that my boys are 23 and 25 now, so we regularly have a conversation. Hey, Dad didn't always show you the best way to be a dad or a husband. So just keep that in mind when you want to start on this journey of being a husband or a dad. So in saying that, there's a lot of opportunities here for a parent to sit a child down and say, look, what you're seeing is not real. There are people out here who really appreciate and value this courageous and noble profession that we serve in law enforcement, first responders, and they're just not being heard right now. Well, especially if your child's on social media.
What child isn't on social media?
Right. So if they're old enough, depending on their age, but if they're teen, preteen, or even an adult teen, they're on social media and they're being plagued with this ugly narrative that, some of it's true, but there's a whole lot of it that's not. There's an element out there that really love law enforcement, really appreciate who we are and what we do, and I would encourage the parents to plug into that there's an element there like the people sitting here.
Right, but when you look at it though, we shielded our kids, right? As a cop, think about a cop that's on a job now 15 years, 18 years, right? For the first 17 years, he's shielded his family from everything and all the effects that are on the job, right? And at 18
effects,
years,
yeah.
as a cop of 18 years or 15 years, whatever, you're a seasoned officer. You know what? Your communication skills with your kids isn't just there anyway. Right. So now to try to break that glass and re-enter your child's life, who's 13, who's still processing, it's easy for us to say, it's easy for us to turn around and go, hell, just power through it. Let's talk to them. But you know what? In the reality of it, we're going to close up. We're not going to. And we're gonna view our children at a distance. We're gonna look at them. We're gonna feel them suffer because we know what the pain is, but we're not. And it's gonna hurt, and we're gonna internalize that. And we're gonna let that eat us away, and then you're gonna start getting more numbers.
Well, you have to. I think we have to give kids a little bit more credit. Hayden tells my story better than I do, and he's only 13.
But you've always had an open communication, pretty much. You and Steve have always communicated.
To a point.
Right. I'm talking about, we're talking about 6 people here, right? And not more than 6 people here. Well, I'm talking about 6 people here who understand it a little bit better. But there are 900,000 sworn law enforcement out there. There are military personnel out there.
Totally understand. I have a biracial child, John. Okay,
I know,
people look at Hayden and they look at me and Steve and be like, "Okay, what? Huh? That's your son?" So go all the way back to when COVID broke, all this racial stuff, everything.
Right. Confusing.
No, because he knows right from wrong.
You taught him.
Exactly, and if you lay the foundation, the first time he came to us and said, "I don't understand what's going on in this situation." We said, "What situation?" He said, and he identifies as black.
Right.
He said, "Why would a black person burn down their neighborhood store when they know the person who owns it is black too?" Right?
Right. So.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. Hello. So he gets the rioters and the looters that are destroying their own cities. They're not the good guys here. And he also has tracked how it's kind of moved into Antifa.
Right, but what I'm saying,
how it's gone before, it's all laying the framework. So deep down inside, they know mom and dad are doing good.
But you have always done that. You have always been there.
So
right?
what are you saying?
It doesn't have to be mom or dad.
Right.
So it can be anybody.
Yeah.
Anybody who has an influence over a child. So there was 2 things. Brad said something about things aren't real because there are people that support law enforcement, and that's a good point because sometimes my kids will ask about something on TV. My husband will say, "Come on, that's not real life for us."
Right.
It's real life for a handful in the grand scheme of things of people, not everybody. So we have to decide what's true, what's not true, what we're dealing with as our family, not as every police officer in the country.
Right.
So you have to focus on what you're dealing with as your family and deal with that. And then the other thing is right from wrong. And it doesn't have to come from the parents. It can come from, so you're not going to talk to your kids. You've been a cop for 18 years. You're closed off.
I never wanted to talk to my kids anyway.
So mom can pick up the slack, aunts and uncles, neighbors, friends, whomever. But knowing the right from wrong, because my kids too, and again, we have conversations and, they don't understand sometimes the race thing because they weren't taught it. They weren't taught to dislike people because of their race. So they don't get it. And when they were younger, they had a hard time wrapping their head around it too. So I think that the core really is who's teaching our kids, and not necessarily back to the school issue, but are we teaching them the right thing? Are our neighbors and our families and our friends teaching them the right thing, and are we accepting everything that we see as face value? So we have to decide what it is that we as our family need to address and address it that way.
I got you on that.
Easier said than done.
Right. And you're saying
I understand.
We need to address everything on face value, which brings me to a different topic. What is face value? Is it the internet? Is it CNN? Is it Fox News? Is it NBC?
Can I add something?
No, it's
Yeah, of
based
course.
on our
Come on, bring it on.
experience.
Where did Doug go?
Wait,
It was magic.
Yeah.
I was like, you're sure.
the tribe has spoken. We wrote it down.
It's like that's most.
Let's boil it down to less cognitive and more emotional. A lot of times, as somebody who has kids, Have you ever walked into your house and noted a shift in the way your kids are acting? All right. We don't have to know why. There's an incongruence. In other words, our mind has the ability to process things a lot faster than we can comprehend them. And that being said, there was a psychological study done where there was a child sat on a mother's lap. Normally it was the mother. And there was a ball that was let down a ramp. It went behind a board. And on the other side of it, another ball was triggered of a different color. Now, these kids weren't verbal, but they knew something was wrong. So it's less about trying to explain. It's important to explain. I'm not taking that away. But it's more important to understand the damaging effects of, and this goes to the vicarious traumatization, you experiencing something awful at work, whether it be an interaction, whether it be just the whole schema of everything. How you're reacting to that affects children.
Absolutely.
And fortunately, you guys and the people in this room are strong, people that have the ability to influence their kids in a right way. But that's very few and far between. So think about kids are responding to the reactions of their parents, the people that guide them. They're responding in very, very adversarial ways. Like, if mom or dad is mad, I'm on your team. I'm mad too. Or I'm scared because mom or dad gets in a certain way. So, of course, we look at it from 1,000 miles up. What are the dynamics of it? People burning down houses of people of the same ethnicity, color, and stuff like that. But more fundamentally, it's something's wrong, and kids can sense it. And if we don't open the dialogue like you guys are opening, they make up their own.
Yeah, they'll fill in the gaps.
Right.
For sure.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying that conversation's hard for a lot of people, because not everybody, you say, there's a strong bunch here and everybody kind of understands it. But there are a lot of people out there that do not know how to open up that conversation. They do not know how to open up the door because they still may be battling themselves.
Well, I think to your point, I think this radio show should even be an inspiration to, hey, let's consider doing something different. To Chris's point, research studies have shown you don't have to say a word to vicarious traumatize your kids. You don't have to. You don't have to say anything. Just you bringing the negative emotion.
It's
home.
the energy that you're. I mean,
100%.
if you're amongst a positive group of people and somebody walks in and they are just completely negative. It's everybody's like, oh.
Right.
You
actually are saying something without saying something.
Right.
You actually
fundamentally, why do you not tell your kids what you've experienced? And this goes to spouses as well. And Karen and I, we've spoke to this a lot. I talk to cops all around the country. Do you tell your wife everything that happens? And the majority say no. And I ask why. I would never want to give them that trauma.
Protected.
Absolutely. Completely understandable. So I ask them this. What if you went home and your spouse, significant other, had been robbed and was hit in the head with a gun as a hematoma? The first question you're going to ask is, what happened? How would you feel if that response was, I don't want you to experience the pain that I did because you've never experienced it? Well, 99% of the cops, male or female, are going to be like, well, you can take that answer and stuff it because you're going to tell me what happened.
Or you'll get another hematoma.
Exactly. So understand, and I teach a class on how to destroy a marriage. I've been married a couple times.
I can teach that class.
It's about 5 seconds long. It's called Don't Communicate. Don't talk. Here's the thing, though. I tell folks, especially in dealing with, they're having marital, problems or just even relational problems, talk to them before the incident happens. By the way, I hate to burst your bubble. Something bad's going to happen to you, right? Right. So do you want them to hear, or do they want to hear the Disney version of what you're struggling with or the Quentin Tarantino version of what you're struggling with? And understand that, have that conversation before it happens. That works for kids, spouses, significant others, because there comes a time when I walk into the house and if I'm dealing with a lot of folks that have been in crisis, I tell my wife, I need a second. If I don't have that conversation beforehand, it's, why are you shunning me? Why are you pushing me away? She knows, all right, he's had some stuff going on today. He's going to talk to me about it later, but not right now. So again, communication, trying to figure out.
And it's the right.
learning a lot about this.
It's got to be the right communication because
Exactly.
it's like you just said. If you use the wrong words, even if you're communicating, the words that you're using can trigger Sure. I mean, because and that's through not being educated on post-traumatic stress, or your own way of perceiving the attitude in somebody. So a spouse can trigger you by even trying to be compassionate, but using the wrong words.
If I could, there is an education there, because I tell you, coming home from my big incident, I didn't know how to tell my son exactly what I had
yours
seen.
was a national incident.
Yes, and that was a big deal. Yeah, so I was in the Pulse nightclub incident, and it caught national attention, of course, and not knowing that the next day when it was in the news, because for me it was a situation that happened. We dealt with it, but the next morning, it was national news. The next morning, I say the next afternoon, I didn't know how to tell him. I mean, he knew what I do, and he knows what I was doing, and he knew, that I was on a SWAT team. He knew I dealt with hostage situations, but I didn't know how to tell him about this. I didn't have that education, so it was therapy actually helped me into how to communicate with him, because this was new to me.
Well, see, and you have like something that goes national news, right? How do you want to try? You can't sugarcoat it because it's right on the TV.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but there's different. You got to tell them because it's going to be. There's so many different variations of the story.
Yeah. I mean, I had to go into hey, the news crews are going to be outside the house.
Right. Which is another thing.
It's
that
a
they
whole
have to
different monster. So
right.
And which was I wasn't trained to talk to my son about. Hey, if they come and talk to you, you've got no comment.
Right.
I mean,
don't rat.
Yeah, don't say anything.
You don't brief your family
Nobody's ever told me to.
You're not a public information officer.
Yeah,
Get out of here.
At 14 years old.
But how many times have you said something in front of your kids, like out of just a response, like a knee-jerk reaction, and then somebody asks them later about something, and you're like, "Well, my dad doesn't like that." Like, oh my god.
Exactly.
Right.
So I mean, that whole thing was just. Wait a minute, I got to have this conversation with my son, and it's got to happen kind of quick, because this is coming.
Right.
This is coming quick. So that was
speaking of what came
right.
later.
No, you're good. You're good.
No, you're
we
fine.
Just, we got to wrap it up, and
we gotta. Yeah,
man, it's just the hour. We could speak about this for hours and hours and hours, and it's that's why you got to go on Trauma Behind the Badge Tuesday nights. I mean, you got to. Blue Help's got a podcast that you guys.
We don't have a podcast, but on Monday nights.
Monday nights.
Yep. Coming up, we have Nick from the Resiliency Project. He'll be on soon. October 5th, we have Code 4 counseling. We have October 12th. We have some parents who lost their son to suicide. So it was something we did in COVID, because we couldn't travel. So on Monday nights we took a couple of weeks off, but we'll be back on again. So.
Yeah, and these are the sites you got to hit. You got to check them out. I want to thank all my guests once again. September 26th, this is what we discussed on the 99 and what we're discussing here. This all comes to smashing the stigma in mental health, trying to heal our heroes the best way we can through whatever therapy that works for you. And, we have to be there for each other. So once again, thank you, Badge of Honor.
Thank you, guys.
Trauma Behind the Badge.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, we're the Badge of Honor. Thank you, Trauma Behind the Badge, and Survive First.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you very much.
It's,
and thank you, Blue Help.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Come on out Saturday. Meet these folks.
9
Shake their
a.m.
hands. 9 a.m.
Rockwall.
Yep. Greet with them. Go on our webpage. Go on www.badgeofhonor.walkthebridge.org.
Do you want me to handle the rest of it?
I've been talking for 4 hours.
All right, so come on out Saturday, 9 a.m. as we rename the 66 bridge, which connects Rowlett to Rockwall. To Heroes Bridge.
You better not screw up because you're not hear the end of it.
So walkthebridge.org for all the details, and we got to send out some prayers, asking everybody to pray for Dan Bongino. If you don't know, so Dan's a former Secret Service agent, also NYPD. Doctors found a lump in his throat, so 9/11 first responder. So prayers go out to Dan Bongino. incredible things on the horizon with what we're doing as a group. Please, we'd love your support. There are so many ways you can show the Mad Radio support so we can keep doing what we just did today and grow. And the first thing is, hey, if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, we got like 6 subscribers, folks, every week.
Me, you, your
I know,
mom.
and my family. So come on,
So
jump
should we
over to
subscribe
Mad,
as well?
Mad Radio.
Hey, Jen, if you're listening, Trauma Behind the Badge needs to subscribe to.
So Mad Radio Texas is on YouTube. Go ahead and subscribe. If you want to direct donate, log on to abadgeofhonor.com, click on Mad Radio. We got a donate button right there. Again, every little bit counts. And if you want to support in the most unique way, I have been told, hey, get your Texas license to carry. Go to the Texas LTC.
Shooting people is the best stress reliever.
Shooting at targets. I'm clarifying. No, shooting at targets. So the Texas license to carry.
Paper moving.
Again, you can visit thetexasltconline.com, pick up your course, and support the show. And until next week, John.
And just remember, if you're battling, you know somebody that's battling, please reach out. You can reach out to a Badge of Honor. You can reach out to Trauma Behind the Badge. You can reach out to Survive First. You can reach out to a buddy, a partner, a friend. But it's okay to reach out. There's always someone there, and you're never alone. God bless. Love yous all. See you on September 26th, 9 a.m., Heroes Bridge.